Says we're recording. Okay, good. I still, everybody, I still don't know what episode this is. I think we're episode 30, continuing the long tradition of me not knowing what day it is or what my name is even. But I am still bringing you guys some great interviews with notable creators. And today I have, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Tyler. I'm a comic book writer and artist. I'm the host of the show Draw and Talk, which is on YouTube, youtube.com/Draw and Talk. And I'm the creator of a bunch of comic books. The one that I'm promoting these days is Demons, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, currently on Indiegogo.
Very good. And Tyler's gracious enough to meet me. It's very early for him, so
I should be getting up like an hour before this, but I just lately have just been so tired. It's because I did that 24-hour comic book challenge this weekend, and my body's still recovering from that.
Oh, yeah, I remember you mentioning that. What day? Today's Tuesday, so, oh man.
Yeah, I did it last Saturday and Sunday.
My goodness. I did that once, and then I slept for 15 hours afterwards. I think I was 19. I had just started. I did 1 year at an art school in New York. And then we heard about the 24-hour challenge. And, tell me about your experience first. I'm very curious. So tell us what it is.
Well, the 24-hour comic book challenge was created by Scott McCloud. If you don't know who he is, he's written so many books on how to create comics, and so he had this challenge. It's more of an exercise on creating comics. You create a 24-page comic in 24 hours, so essentially you do a page an hour, and there's no planning involved. You just you start creating a story and you just see where it goes. And so I've never wanted to do it, but some people on my Discord channel were like, "Hey Tyler, we should do this challenge," and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. It's not like I'm having a baby in a couple of weeks. Let's do this." And
it's good practice. It's practice though.
I know. So we started it. The first 2 or 3 hours, I was like, "This is pretty fun. This is pretty fun." And then it dawned on me that this is a full 24 hours, and I was like, "Oh, we started at 8 a.m. I'll be finished by tomorrow 8 a.m." And then I was like, "Oh man, that means at 3 to 5, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. I'm still gonna be doing this, and I won't be sleeping." So I was like, "I have to get this done sooner than that." So I took a lot of breaks. I went to a Pencil for Life, Brad Ashworth's wedding celebration. So I took 2.5 hours off to do that, and then I had dinner with my wife, and that was another 2 hours, and we watched a movie. And I still was able to, and I counted all that time within the 24 hours, and I still was able to finish my comic in 18 hours, all 24 pages. And that wasn't just penciling and inking. That was also putting some screen tones on it digitally and lettering it.
Did you post these anywhere?
Yeah, you can find them on my I just threw them on Twitter. I was like, "Hey, here's a link. You can read it." So you can find it on my Twitter. You can find it on my Discord. And then if you follow me on any of those platforms and you want to see it, I'll send it to you for free.
Mm-hmm. It's and you said you had not heard of this before you tried it?
The 24-hour challenge?
Yeah.
Oh no, I had. I just never done it because I thought it was stupid.
It was interesting. When I had first heard of it, part of what I guess now as a more mature artist, illustrator rather, I see immense value in it because it makes you you have to decide. Part of comics is speed versus quality always, and you only have a certain amount of time. Or, let's put it this way: you can spend triple time on a single page, and maybe it'll look amazing, but now your book is overdue. And part of this, the value of this challenge, at least when I did it, was deciding what was the most important thing in each panel, in each page. How much style, quote unquote, am I going to try to put into it in every panel, and how much detail am I going to try to put on each character. And it really made me realize how much or how little is necessary to communicate a good comic. Or everybody has their own definition of what makes a good comic, but the challenge kind of really forces you to face your own, I guess, presuppositions of how much value and detail needs to go into each panel. Did you feel yourself having to make, gosh, what's the word?
Sacrifices.
Concessions? Yeah, like did you have to cut corners to get a panel done on time?
Oh yeah. Well, like yeah, and so I was trying to. I was like, man, I need to do like a page, like one or two pages an hour. That was the goal. Sometimes three. Um, but a lot of yeah. Just because I was taking so many breaks, the biggest thing for me that it gave me a lot of appreciation, especially when sometimes I can be critical on DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and comics I buy, and I go, wow, like they did not spend enough time on this panel. It makes me angry.
Yeah.
And then I go, but and then it. So after doing this challenge, though, it made me go back to some of those comics that I was making fun of, and I go, but is the storytelling element there, or is the story still there? Because that's what you sacrifice. You sacrifice putting in detail in order to ask yourself as the creator, is am I still telling a story with my art? So anytime I drew a crowd, I probably drew like two people who you could actually fully see, and then everyone else were just black. We're just silhouetted.
Yeah.
um Instead of drawing every single building, I draw one or two buildings, and then the rest were silhouetted. And someone might say, oh, that's really lazy, and but at the same time, you have to go. I then would say, well, can you still understand the story?
Yeah.
Because that's what comics ultimately is. It's artwork that's telling a story. And yeah, I cut corners during this 24-hour challenge. Would I have done it if I was doing a page a day? uh Probably not, but it did make me realize that it is speed over quality, and it's finding that balance on which one's more important when it comes to telling a story.
I remember having a teacher so briefly. I dropped out of art school in my second year at the very beginning, but for a few weeks I talked to one cartooning teacher named Klaus Janson, who was an inker on The Dark Knight.
He's not a big deal or anything.
You have to forgive me. No,
Well, you didn't know that he
do
was.
you know that name? Okay, because
Oh yeah.
I'm so sorry, everyone listening. I don't know American comics that well. I knew Frank Miller existed, and he let us know, like, don't mention Frank Miller in front of me.
Oh really?
Because he was sick of it, I guess. I don't know. I didn't know the story of what was going on. But anyway, Klaus Janson, he's a great guy. He was a great teacher. I drove him crazy because I stayed after class. And I was like begging him, wait, you're a real artist? Can I ask you questions? I was driving him crazy. I followed him out of the building. I was asking him questions. And then I dropped out for other reasons. But one of the things he told me was the most important thing in a comic is clarity. And how clearly from panel to panel you can communicate the story. So concessions that you're mentioning is like doing things like silhouettes are a very necessary, and sometimes, how do I put this? If I'm reading a comic, I don't tend to spend a lot of time on a panel, maybe 10 seconds max, just to kind of get the feel for the scene, and then I move on to the next one, depending on how big and detailed the panel is. The more detailed the panel is, I feel like the artist is telling me spend more time downloading what's in this panel, so you can understand what's happening. But if they do silhouettes and stuff, that just means get the flavor and move on. Like in a movie, they would have cut away from that scene faster.
Yeah.
So as artists, I think part of our tendency, you might call it peacocking. What I tried when I was younger, what I wanted to do was prove myself. Like, oh, I'm not going to do any silhouettes because I want to be a great artist. I want everyone to know how great I am, so I'm going to spend 1,000,000 hours on this one panel. But then, I don't think anyone would look at any of my panels as detailed as they could be and be like, oh, wow, he's a great artist. But, I guess we could talk about this later. I don't think it's worth spending a week on a single page if someone's going to read it in a matter of seconds.
Well, it's not, and you like you said, with the clarity there. You spend probably maybe a minute or less on each page as you read, and there's just so much to take in, and so you as the artist need to convey the most important parts. And that means, if there's a single panel, what's more important, having the main character in the forefront, um, acting the way they are, or drawing all 100 background people in unique different ways,
Mhm.
that are serving no purpose to the story for the most part, because they're just all shopping on a street. I do think though that, and I heard this from Sean Gordon Murphy. He said that every comic, like single issue, should have at least one oh my gosh moment, and that with the art. And so that's why he says he typically tries to have one 2 page spread, or
Hmm.
one splash page, that will stop the flow of that, like 30 seconds to 1 minute reading, where you stop and you go, wow, that's a beautiful page, and then you'll move on back to it. He says just every single issue should have that one moment where you just go, oh wow, that was beautiful, and then move on to the rest of the story, because the story is important. And he acknowledges that as an artist. He says, the story is more important, but the art complements it. However, let you as the artist have that one moment to shine, where the person goes, wow, that art is beautiful.
Yeah. There's such a temptation. I actually wrote that down. That's a great thing to keep in mind. What I've always felt going to a comic shop browsing around is the only reason I'll ever pick up a book in the first place is because I think the art looks good on the cover.
Hmm.
And then I'll open the book and I'll see if the interior art even looks anything like it. And if it doesn't, I will put the
You're
book
out.
back.
Same. Yep.
And it's a heartbreaking reality that I need. What do I say? I used to say, I come for the art, but I stay for the story. So it's the art's duty to pop off the shelf, to make readers think like, okay, this is a book for you. Look at this art. They open the art and they say, okay, yeah, I kind of like the art. Now I'm going to pay attention to what they're trying to tell me. And there are cases where sometimes the art is bad. I always pick on him as an example of this. There's a guy named Jeffrey Brown who does black and white, kind of autobiographical, kind of navel gazy comics about, how just his life and stuff like that. His art, especially early on, was terrible, but the stories really connected to me. So I bought all of his books. Whereas there are some books that have incredible, incredible art, but the story is trash, and I never buy a second issue of it. The only reason, I don't know about you, but that's when I shop,
Oh
I
no,
look, yeah.
I'm the same way. I pick up a book, and if I don't like the art, I'm someone who, like, when I spend my money, I I know what I kind of know what I'm already getting myself into. So I do a ton of research on a comic before I buy it, because the big thing is, man, do I want to waste my money on a book that I'm not even gonna like? And there have been times where I've been told, Tyler, get this issue, and I get the issue, and for some reason, and I'm just so picky on the art and the story.
Mhm.
Like, it could be the greatest story, but if the art style is not there, I cannot take it. It drives me crazy.
Mhm.
Jeff Loeb said, you can write the greatest piano song, and if you have a tuba playing it, it's gonna sound terrible.
That's an interesting, and he was talking about art specifically like this.
Yeah, he was talking about writing comics and writing art. He's like, you as a comic writer could write the greatest story ever told, and if you don't have the right artist, it won't be what you want. And he likened that to writing a song for the piano, and a tuba player plays it.
That's something to think about. And also, well, having great covers and then different interior art was, I suppose, a necessary evil from. If I'm competing with all these other artists on a single shelf at a comic shop, I want my cover to really stand out and look good. But then
Hmm.
there's this weird disappointment that happens to me when I open a book and I realize, oh, the interiors are just like they're, I don't know, drawn by some guy in art school or something. I want the cover artist to do the rest of the interiors. Why don't they do that?
Hmm.
So for me, it's kind of weird that more artists don't do their own covers because it's kind of like false advertising. Not in
No, it
a
really is. But I will say, if I feel like I enjoy doing sequential art more.
Yeah.
Um, I'm terrible with covers. I never know what to do. I can't make them like unique or interesting. When someone's like, "Hey, we draw a pinup for a cover," I typically like go, "Yeah, I'll try," but I'm not good with covers, and so I sometimes I understand. Like I'm with you. If I open up a comic and the cover is way better than the interior, it kind of leaves a like a bad impression on me. But at the same time, that probably would be what would happen if I worked for the big two. They'd be like, "Oh, Tyler can't draw covers. Let's get someone else to do it."
I see. I used to have hang-ups about that, and then I started thinking of covers as just other, like just a panel that's shaped like a vertical rectangle. And then there are things like composition, the rule of thirds, if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
And then I think about, if I just follow this stencil, I'm not a particularly good composition person, but if I just do the rule of thirds every time, at the very least, maybe it'll be boring, but at least it'll look somewhat professional. Composition is a very important. I mean, when we put together our pages, that's actually doesn't we talked about Scott McCloud earlier? Doesn't he talk about that in Making Comics? Did you ever
Oh
read
yeah.
that?
Yeah, I have it in my car. I couldn't like quote it or anything, but yeah, he does talk about composition for like a whole chapter, like laying out different he lays out like different like pages on there and explains like why certain like ways of composing pages are bad.
Between, if anyone's listening who hasn't read these books, it's a series. One is Understanding Comics. The second one is Reinventing Comics, which I didn't like so much, but we can talk about that another time. And then Making Comics is the third book in this series, which I would say is like the textbook for any student of comics to study. But I haven't read it in a while.
Yeah, it's one of those books, and I think he has all. Yeah, I actually don't think I have Making Comics now. That I think I have Understanding, the Understanding one.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm pretty sure that's the first one.
okay, I just know that like I remember like when I first wanted to start making comics, I grabbed a bunch of resource books, and everyone's like, "You got to read these, you got to read these," and it was fun reading them. But at the same time, at the end of the day, I was like, "Man, I'd probably learn best if I just start drawing."
Yeah.
You can have all these resource books, but if you're not actually putting in the work, they're pointless.
Right. It's kind of like reading in Naruto or something, reading all these ninja scrolls, but you don't actually do the practice to learn the
Exactly.
karate moves. Something like that. But I do, for anyone listening, understanding comics is more of a historical. Oh gosh, I haven't drank enough coffee, I guess. It's taking apart what comics are and how they're made and what the sequences mean and the historical context. Making comics is more about the inch by inch, how to put together a page. It's about the craft itself. So I recommend both these books. 100% go buy these books to anyone listening. Another thing that we mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch upon real quick is with his 24-hour comic. So there's things like you can paint in low resolution. You could call that a sketch, let's say. I've noticed that even professional painters from like the old days, they would have studios where they would have different assistants doing different parts of a body. Like, oh, this student is really good at drapery, so I'm going to have him do the dress of this model that's sitting here. And then the artist later would go in there and do all the detail work once the sketch, the underpainting, was finished. And I've noticed that the 24-hour comic exercise specifically teaches us to draw our comics in low resolution, even in stick figure form. I have a theory that even a good comic, if it were drawn in stick figures, would still be fun to read, and I would still want to read more in a story. And I think the perfect example is an artist named One, who makes One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. Is he the original artist of One Punch Man?
Yeah, he's the writer and artist, and then another artist came in on top of it and said, "Can I professionally draw your comic?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
awesome."
Yeah. Yeah. I know it.
And I think that's the ultimate example of, you could tell even through his wonky drawings that One Punch Man was still an amazing comic. And
Mm-hmm.
so then another artist came in and drew it in what I would call high resolution, like
Mm-hmm.
really professional, polished. But even in low resolution, One Punch Man was still really good. So you can look at old paintings from the 1500s, and then if you look at, like, say, the clothing, you can see they're just little slashes of paint and then they're left alone. But then the face specifically has had so much time devoted to it, and the hands and stuff like that. There are things that an artist, when you're doing a page in a comics page, you'll have to decide what's the most important thing on this page and what am I going to spend the most time on. Because you're also telling the audience what's the most important thing to look at and read. And you can ignore all this other stuff. It's just there for context. I
Oh yeah,
think,
for sure, for sure. Yeah, like, and I think sometimes, you know, sometimes we're a little too harsh on artists. I mean, I think we're in a really interesting age of being critics on the mainstream comics,
mm,
and me included. And doing this challenge, it was really like eye opening to be like, okay, this is what I can. This is like there were. I thought my pages were gonna be like absolute trash, and when I was done with it, I was actually surprised. I was actually pretty proud of myself. I said, this is actually isn't as bad as I thought they were, and it made me think, wow, if I had eight, like, what would a page look like if I actually spent 6 to 8 hours
mhm.
on this page? Um, so it made me feel good, but so when I look at like there's I can't I won't name the Marvel comic book artist, and if you wanted me to I couldn't, but in their X-Men, whenever they did smaller panels, the people wouldn't have faces, uh but they were still recognizable as their characters. They just wouldn't have faces. And I remember reading it the first time being like, wow, like what a lazy artist. But now at this point, I'm sure like they were worrying about all like the bigger panels on that page. And when it was time to do the details on the small panel, they were like, you know what? We know, everyone knows what Wolverine looks like. It's a small panel the size of my finger. Let's just make sure that the reader, when they look at that panel, they go, oh, Wolverine's there, and then they're gonna move on. There's no need to spend so much time getting at the tiniest micron and putting every detail on this tiny face.
Yeah, it's true. There's we have to look at it scientifically speaking, I guess. All I'm doing as an artist is reminding you that Wolverine is there,
Hmm.
and it doesn't matter what he looks like in that panel.
It doesn't.
I guess that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is communicate a story. And if Wolverine wasn't there, perhaps readers would forget that he was in the scene, and then he would show up again later and be like, "Oh, he's here." That's something I've been juggling with as well. Every time I do a panel, and then I say like, "Oh, there's going to be all these structures in the background and trees and all these details," but I think when we're walking around, let's say we go for a hike, we're not looking at all the leaves on the trees. We're just kind of like, oh, that's a tree there. That's a sky. There's some nice clouds. But we're
Hmm.
not analyzing every square inch. We're kind of taking in the whole scene. And I think part of the discipline or the craft of comics is to give people the impressionist snapshot of the scene and only pay attention to the story.
Oh
But
yeah.
but there's different schools of thought. I mean, if an artist can afford to spend a God, if I dare say this, if they can afford to spend a year on a single issue, but you know what? That's their right. I
It
don't
is.
agree with it. Not I'm not trying to like start a fight or anything, but like, there, comics I would say are a sequential medium that require multiple issues to be told, to tell a single story.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if there's much room in an industry for, I'll tell you one story that'll take you an hour to read over the course of 5 years.
Oh, absolutely not. And that's a whole different topic of like respecting and disrespect of the customer value. Um, but I liked what you said with the hiking thing because it just made me think. Well, if you were to draw a sequential page of hiking, you would probably just make sure that okay that there's going to be green on this page, it needs to be blue, and then you might detail one tree that's next to the character, and the rest in the background can be just shapes.
Yes.
And the reader's eye will be like, oh yeah, those are trees. They're in a forest.
I always say I'm Bob Rossing it right now.
Yes.
Because why
Well,
not? I mean, it works.
and also like because of this exercise, I've always been fascinated by web comics, but I've never like gone into them. And so I recently re-downloaded Webtoons, and I was like, okay, these people have to crank out an update a week. And I used to be really critical, like, man, like you just can't show as much detail as you need to be. And I was reading some even last night, which is probably why I'm still kind of tired because I was staying up too late learning how to invest in stocks and reading Webtoons at the same time. And I was like, you know what? This panel doesn't need any like there was typical web comics. Sometimes there's no background, so there would be like three panels with background, and then there'd be three or four with not. I used to be very critical of that, but while I was reading it last night, I was like, wow, I don't need the backgrounds of these panels because I already know the artist has already told me where we are.
Yes.
It's not important, it's the dialogue. And so I've been getting really into the idea of maybe I'm gonna make a webtoon next year and for the next couple of years. I don't know, it's just this 24-hour challenge was really eye-opening to me in ways that I thought it was just something that I was going to do for fun, to promote my book and stream it online. And if anything, it's kind of like changed the way I think about comics.
Yeah, for any students listening, I do recommend doing it once.
Yeah,
But
once. Just do it once. I'll never do it again.
that's what everyone says afterwards. I was so sick afterwards. And it was funny because I had to go to my art school in New York and I lived in New Jersey. So I had to go there on the bus, do the 24-hour challenge, and then come back on the bus. And I was so tired.
That sounds awful.
It was the pits. But actually, miracles happen though from these things because I took that comic that I did in the 24-hour challenge and then I redrew it and I submitted it to Tokyo Pop, and that's what gave me my break. So I have to thank Scott McCloud for that. But it's interesting also, another thing that I have written in my notes here is iteration. In game development, we have different versions of a game. We have an alpha, a beta, final versions of vertical slices, all that stuff. And so what you want to do in game development is slap together all the basic functions of the game as quickly as possible without committing time to creating art or anything like that, or big art. And just play the game and see if it's fun. And if it isn't fun, try to make the changes as early as possible because you won't have to overhaul all of this other stuff that you've built if you are, I don't know, 2 years in development and then realize the game's not fun.
Yeah.
I think comics are very similar. So like when we write a script first, and then we do the thumbnails, and then we do a sketch, and then we do pencils, then inks, then colors, then lettering. We're doing what I would call iterations. The person who's made the comic has read it more times than anyone else. And I think if I've read it 10 times already and it's still good, then it's probably going to be good for someone's first time.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting that you bring that up, like the whole iteration thing. Yeah, because I've done. My brother, he was like, we were gonna make a game, and we were doing all these things, and he goes, "Hey, I'm gonna program it. Just draw some squares."
Yes.
And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Because if it's not fun with squares, dude, it's not gonna be fun at all."
That's the way. Yeah. It's there's another quote that I always quote is fail quickly, which is if there's a critical problem with your project, try to identify it as fast as possible. Like, there's nothing worse if you're writing a story and then you get to the ending and you realize, wait, no, that character actually wasn't dead the whole time. And then you have to go back to the very beginning and write the whole story over from the beginning with that idea in mind.
No, that's so true. That's with everything. That's with everything. It's fail quickly, and I think that's something that I have had to learn it's taking me 3 years to learn to fail quickly because I've made some very poor decisions in my indie comics career that I feel like I'm suffering currently, because I just did not learn how to quote unquote fail quick enough.
Uh-huh.
Because you just feel like, oh, if I can push this out, it's gonna make sense, and yeah, it you struggle.
It's funny too. There's this there's this stigma attached. I mean, even the word failure, I suppose. There's a stigma to it that I don't think is valid, where you have to treat failure as a teacher, not as a thing that will cause ridicule. I don't like the idea of Last Jedi is the most popular example, I guess, but like that was a failure. But nobody told him that it was a failure from his side. And it was only when it was released that people were like, oh, this sucks. Or let's say you and I work on a project, and let's say I did an Indiegogo that didn't get funded. And then some guys would actually presume to make fun of a creator who didn't make it, let's say. Whereas I think the very opposite should happen is we should analyze why a project didn't succeed, not be embarrassed. In fact, we should study why it didn't work and then try to do better next time. There is zero shame in failure. And I don't like an immediate way that I can tell if I'm going to get along with someone is if they make fun of someone for failing, or if they, how do I put this? Maybe if they deserve it, it's a little funny. But if the person, there's an honest person trying to take a shot at their dream, I don't think there's any shame at all in falling down. You dust yourself off. No one's going to make fun of you. Keep trying. I guess part of the reason that I have this show, or one of my dreams for this show, is for younger artists to listen and kind of get inspiration. So in terms of iterations and failing, do you think, I guess, what do you think about that? How can a younger artist take their mistakes and failures, or whatever word we want to use, and find the strength to try again?
Well, I'm constantly failing, like constantly. And like I acknowledge it like so much. I am constantly failing. I look at my like YouTube channel, which I'm like trying so hard to grow, and there are days where there are some videos where they hit and I'll get over 1,000 views, and I'll be like, yeah, and it's not about like the likes, it's not about the views, but you know, you need some kind of validation as a creator. And so I'll get that, and then sometimes I'll really work on a video super hard, and then it gets nothing, and I go, okay, that sucked, that was a failure. What did I do on this piece that people liked, and what did I do wrong on this piece that people didn't like? Similarly right now, I'm okay with saying this. My Demons Volumes 1, 2, and 3 Indiegogo is not doing where I thought it was going to do. I'll be straight up honest. I had planned in my mind to have been funded in the first 3 days, because my previous ones were funded within the first 3 days. So I figured this is the finale of the series. I would have funded within the first 3 days, and I'm not. And I'm actually struggling to get backers. Struggling. And I'm very self-aware about this, and I've been doing a lot of thinking the last week. There could be a lot of things. Is it because the price point? Is it the price point? Is it the fact that there's Indiegogo fatigue? Was my story not good enough for people to come back? Which is strange that people would back volumes 1, they back volume 2. Why wouldn't they back volume 3? So, you know, are they tired of the art? There's a lot of things that I feel like, and you know, my Indiegogo right now is failing. Which is fine. It means that it might be my marketing. Maybe I'm doing a bad job marketing my comic. And so, let's say that my Indiegogo doesn't, let's say we don't get funded, and I need to refund everyone's money. There's a couple things I can do. I can either mope and leave, or I can be like, okay, do I need to relaunch with a smaller goal? Do I need to relaunch with some different marketing tactics and then put it out at a different time of the year? Maybe like right now, it's just not a good time of the year for people. You know, and I'm okay with failing. And even if I don't if even if I only get like exactly 1,200, which would be my lowest, funded project, I'm still okay. And it's still kind of like, quote unquote, a failure to me. This whole experience is a learning opportunity. And I think we as creators, sometimes we look at the numbers and we say that's what defines me. But I think it's what you come out of it is what defines you. Is Demons the best work I'm ever going to put out? No, but at the time it was my best work that I created. Charlie Adlard of Walking Dead, he says that he thinks that the page that he drew the previous day is the worst page that he's done, and that the page that he's drawing today will be the best page he's done. And he says that every single day he has that mentality that, he says he hates it when people are saying, well, how come this issue has so many variations of your art? And he's like, well, I'm trying to get better with each page.
Mm-hmm.
Well, get better with every video, get better with every project. And if you slump, okay, it's fine. Don't mope. Try to figure out what you did wrong. Failing, I think, is an experience that you either learn from, or it says that you really can't take it.
Mm-hmm. I try to think of it as if I were a little kid and I don't know, I do something to embarrass myself, and then do a bunch of kids point and laugh, and not in a nice way. Like, do they laugh to make you feel,
Mm-hmm.
like a chump and whatever? And then there's this whole animal idea of like your brain is flooded with cortisol, as opposed to say dopamine. When you do something nice, your brain has a reward system which gives you dopamine, which tells you, oh, this is a good thing that I did, I'll do it again. And that's how your brain tells you, sort of, this is what I'm supposed to do with myself. Because I'm sure when we were little kids, we were praised as little kids for doing a drawing or writing a story or something.
Yeah.
And from a very early age, we're like, oh, that was a nice dopamine hit, I'd like more of that, please.
Oh yeah, we all want that validation. Is so it feels good. It's kind of it's addicting that we want this validation, and we need to learn as creators to eat up failure. I've gotten several bad reviews. I've gotten more good reviews on Demons and bad. But I've gotten some bad reviews, and it's never been like I just didn't like it. It's been like a terrible review. It's been like a Comedy Central's roast of Tyler Carpenter's Demons. And I have learned over the years to take every criticism and to grow from it. Mm-hmm. Even if they roast the crap out of me. And I've contacted every creator who's ever badmouthed it and say, hey, thanks for giving me your critique. Like, if you just say, oh, this is crap, move on, then I go, okay, you don't really count as a reviewer. But if they go, they should have changed this. This is what I was struggling with in the story. I will then message them personally and be like, hey, thank you so much for showing me my failures. I promise that the next story that I work on will have improvements on the things that you've mentioned. And I hope that you can find my next story worthy of either your dollar or your time in reading it. But I'm sorry I failed this time for you.
That reminds me of one of the teaching tools. I used to be an art teacher, and one of the things that I would think about is some students respond better to encouragement, and others respond to, like, this is a harsh word would be shame. It's not exactly shame, but like negative reinforcement versus positive reinforcement. So like, if I don't know, if a little kid falls down, they were on the jungle gym, and I'll be like, you look at you, they'll be like, hey, I'm not a chump, I'll do it again. And they respond to negative reinforcement, whereas another kid might fall and I'll be like, oh, that was close, good job, try again. And then they'll try again. So every artist is different, and they respond to different types of reinforcement. But at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is so I'm going to receive a critique, let's say, from another artist. Is it them trying to shame me in order to give me... I know this sounds really like I've been smoking weed or something. I don't mean it like this. But like, are they trying to induce cortisol into my brain? Like, are they trying to make me feel like crap so that I'll stop? Mm-hmm. And that is not useful or positive critiquing. That is not helpful. What they're trying to actually do is make you stop making comics. Those people are jerks and bullies, and they need to be shot out of a cannon, let's say.
Yeah.
But that's not useful. What if I'm going to make fun of somebody? What really is happening is that, let's say it's a really talented artist who I don't want to make comics anymore. I'm going to try to make fun of them. I'm going to try to chop them down. I'm going to try to do anything I can to make them stop spending hours practicing, improving. I want them to be in a closet shaking and crying and feeling bad about themselves so that I'll have the field to myself. As opposed to saying, I'm going to offer a critique to somebody privately, maybe. Hey, this is what I thought of, so-and-so panels, and this is how maybe you can fix it. And the person says, yeah, I'm going to spend more hours working on that. Thank you. If we're really building each other up as creators, and if we're audience members trying to build up creators, let's say, the best thing we can do is say, hey, here are some ways you can improve, but I don't know. I'm not going to receive it as something that's worth being embarrassed about. Do better next time. That's the best. The old Japanese gambare, do better because you can do better if you keep practicing. The only time you should quit is if you feel like you're not going to practice anymore. Mm-hmm. I think maybe that's the time to step away for like a year and really decide if you wanted to be a comic artist to begin with. But if a person's trying to tell me to quit and stuff like that because I suck and I'll never get better, honestly, there is no such thing as natural talent. I don't believe in it. Maybe there are natural advantages like height in basketball or something, but in art, I don't think people have natural DNA advantages. I think it's just the 10,000 hour rule. The more time you spend drawing and practicing and drawing comics, the better you will get at it. And feeling sorry for yourself will not make you get better. The only thing is practice.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I actually did a video on that. I don't know if you saw it. It was what if you suck at art?
Uh-huh.
And it was it had scenes from Mark Wahlberg, the gambler. He's talking about if you're not a genius, just give up. Mm-hmm. And I totally agreed with what you said. I think there's a thing. There's a thing currently, a stigma where if you're not good right now, you need to give up. And I say that because I wanted to retweet it, but the Twitter, and I just don't want to get into any drama because it just pisses me off.
Sure.
But and my life's already stressful enough to deal with anything else. But I saw a tweet and someone said, imagine bragging as a creator that you got $8,000 on an Indiegogo or Kickstarter. How pathetic that you should see yourself as a failure. Literally, that was the tweet.
As in, I should have gotten more.
As in, if you only got $8,000, your campaign is crap. Your comic book is crap. You aren't. You like. Why are you congratulating yourself? It wasn't a win. You are seen as a critical failure. And I saw that tweet, and you can guess the kind of people who were tweeting that with their little symbols. And I saw that, and I got so angry. One, because I had a moment of vulnerability because I'm like, man, my campaign's doing terrible right now, and I don't know why. But two, it made me so angry because the fact that people like you and me, George, we talk with a lot of like creators who want to make comics, who think comics is the greatest thing, which it is, and they're so excited to start making comics and they want to know what can I do. And if I saw that tweet 3 years ago on my first campaign when I got $1,700, and I remember going to my wife and like, I did it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm awesome. I felt so good. If I saw that like 3 years ago, I probably would have jumped off a cliff. Like with my art career. I'm not going to jump off a cliff. But it would have really hurt my feelings as a new up and coming creator. And it made me think, am I doing this? Are we doing this for the money, or are we doing for this craft? And at that moment when I saw that tweet, it made me realize that I think a lot of creators these days, who are in our indie scene, who are doing Indiegogos, they're doing it for the money. They came into the show because they saw the money, and that's it. It's not for the art, it's not for the craft, and it really hurt. It really hurt seeing people agree with this one tweet because there's so many amazing creators who are just starting, who are been practicing 2 3 years. I'm one of those creators
Mm-hmm.
who I'm still constantly learning. I'm trying to grow. I did like flips last year when no, it was actually this year when my campaign got to $3,000. I was like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
like that means so much to me that a handful of people thought that my work was worthy enough of their dollar and their time, and that they backed me, and that I'm so grateful for $3,000. And if someone were to say you got $3,000, oh my gosh, you absolutely suck, like leave, I would have been devastated.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's the culture that we're in with comics. If you're not making money, get out. You're not good enough.
Well, the first question I would ask someone like that, and I know you got to go soon. I don't want to
You're
take too
good.
much time. The first question I would ask that person is, do you draw? What do you make that's of so much value that you can put your work next to mine and pretend that your opinion on this matters? But that's because that would be me flexing. That's not nice. But like, the next question I would ask is, how do I put this? No, I'll put it in a positive way instead. I think selling one book to a stranger is a miracle. And I cheer every time I sell one copy of a book.
Oh yeah.
It's like, because I still feel like when I was in kindergarten, even, I have comics from when I was in kindergarten and little stories. I used to draw stuff, and then my friends would read them, and I'd be like, yeah, I can do more, you know. And then I would think, like, wait, what if I could sell these? I was like 6 years old, 7, and I was like, oh, I could sell these books to someone for like a quarter or something. And then years and years later, I'm like, wow, I'm still doing that. And to think that someone would read something that I've made and decide that it's worth actual human money. And there is no amount that matter. Like, what you said it was $7,000 or $8,000 that they were.
$8,000.
Okay.
This particular creator was making fun of another creator for only getting $8,000.
Okay. So the amount of money that you make on a project, the only number that matters, it's no one's business what your number is. When you say I need this much and you write a number down, that's because you know your needs as a person in terms of income, expenses, all that stuff, printing costs, whatever. Maybe you just need a few bucks or you just want a few bucks, doesn't matter. Whatever that number is your business alone. It's nobody else's business. That's another important thing. But then on top of that, you have to ask, how much money do I need to make now the next one? If you can make enough money to just live, food, rent, utilities, whatever, $8,000 is an incredible amount of money. You can survive on that for months, depending on where you live, I guess.
Yeah,
Not so
absolutely.
much in New Jersey. That's another topic. But $8,000 to make a comic is outstanding. Even $1,000, like depending on your level of like, are you a full timer, that sort of thing. That's something to cheer about. Absolutely, any amount of money. And anyone, I would say now, like, I don't know who this person is. I don't think I want to know, but like, if you would make fun of someone for something like that, I think that speaks to some really low character. And we're talking about the cortisol thing again. What they're trying to do is chop that person down so that they'll kind of, like, even animals, like when they lose a fight, I'm talking about Jordan Peterson stuff again. Like when crabs lose a fight, they'll like crawl into a ball and like comfort themselves and feel like crap. Oh, I'm a loser. I'm thinking like a loser. Therefore, I will be a loser again. Whereas if you win a fight, your chest is like expanded, you know, you stand up straight, you assume a vulnerable position because you're confident and you're almost saying in the animal world, come at me, bro. I'm a winner and I will keep winning. And what happens is you do keep winning because you're telling your body, I am a winner, I am confident. And everyone believes that you are a winner. And that's why I think a lot of the confident psychopath types actually do get a lot of audience members because these people are not self-aware enough to kind of examine, wait, did I lose for a reason? No, they just keep winning because they have this position of chest out, shoulders back. Oh, that guy must be a winner. I'm going to see what he's up to. So I think there's some really deep, weird psychological stuff happening where there are groups of people who will try to, in gaming terms, they will debuff you with, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, they'll debuff you with this "you're a loser" magic spell, and now you feel like a loser, and you didn't draw a comic today. You lost 8 hours arguing with some shithead on Twitter that isn't worth your time because you're swimming in cortisol, and instead of feeling like a winner and drawing that next comic, getting 8 hours of practice, you wasted your time on Twitter. Or, for instance, for me, like if I'm sad, I'll play some Overwatch, right? If I play too much Overwatch, I haven't drawn a comic. So I can't listen to sad music and feel sorry for myself. Instead, I need to gird my loins, as it's said in the Bible.
Yeah.
And then just say, you know what? I like this feeling of being a loser because it's like that Rocky feeling. You beat the crap out of me, beat the snot out of me, but I still gained experience points. Mm-hmm. And then whoever's making fun, they're not climbing. It's like that analogy of crabs in a bucket or crabs in a barrel. They'll just keep pulling. Have you heard of this one?
I haven't.
I don't know if it's true. Lobsters or crabs. Any one of them, like you can leave the lid open because if one tries to climb out, the others will pull him down. And no crab can get out because they're all just pulling each other back inside.
Oh, wow.
So there's this analogy, however true it is, I don't know. But I see this in our Twitter circles that we've, been kind of circling. I don't want to talk about them anyway. I want to draw comics. But I see that they just love this idea of you're a loser. Be a loser like me. Feel bad for yourself. Don't try. Don't get better. And to them, it's like, I will pass you so soon. Or if I'm not already past you already. And I'm outside your gravitational field. Like, go self-destruct over there with your black hole. I will go and explore the galaxy.
No, it's true. It's true. And one, I'm really glad that I have like you to talk with because there are days where you just look at the crap field of Twitter and you go, man, am I gonna make comics? Am I still gonna make comics? And every time you always tell me, which I'm very grateful for, George, is you're saying at the end of the day, we're gonna keep going, and all this is gonna be behind us, and we're gonna be the ones that last. And where we were talking about it on my stream where you said, where have these people been, who are making comics and starting this drama? You've been making comics for how many years before? And, I was making comics before and I'm still going to make comics after all of this. In the end, we just have to plant our feet firm and we'll last. And yeah, there's no reason to bring yourself down to their level. They're clearly unhappy. If you are a creator and someone makes fun of you and says, your book sucks, you only raised, $8,000, I would ask them like, well, what have you done?
Yeah.
What have you done? Have you made a comic? Do you know the hard work it is to make it? Do you know the hard work it is to market it? If you don't, you can't talk. And then I'd ask them, what would you rather have? Would you rather have one book every single year, or would you rather have a bunch of books every single year by a creator who values your dollar, values your time, and values you as a person? I'm just gonna use like someone like Doug TenNapel for example. He respects the industry, he respects his customers, he respects the medium, and he respects his customers' time and money. When he says, hey, I'm going to get this book out to you guys on time, right now that he is probably busting his butt doing 12 to 14 hour days trying to get these pages done, constantly updating his fans so he can put out the best book that he can. And that's an example that I want to do. And it's hard to do that because when you see that people are flocking to someone who doesn't respect any of those qualities that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, we just need to rise above. I think we're just in an interesting time in comics. I think we're all going to be fine afterwards.
I would think so. The people who are going to survive the next year or two, I think, because I think some crazy earthquakes are coming in the industry, or in our community. The people who are going to survive are the ones who are able to keep working on their books regardless of drama. I have a habit of getting involved in it, and I shouldn't either. Work on our books and keep improving. The ones who are going to never be heard from again are going to quit, are going to, I don't know, they're looking for something of value that isn't related to comics. I think they're just using comics as their platform, but they're really after something else. So eventually they're going to leave. And then comics is going to be this, I don't know how to put it. It's going to be the Wild West again, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they don't leave, they'll just be over there in the corner with their own thing. But the most important thing for us as creators, have you ever played Dark Souls?
Yeah.
All right. And there's this character in the series that keeps recurring. His name is the Crestfallen Warrior, I think. And he's at the first bonfire in when you arrive in Anor Londo. Not Anor Londo, in Lordran. But he's this character, he's very much about like, oh, why don't we just quit? Let's just sit here and wait to die. And he's a comedic character, but I think that's what happens. It's a metaphor. This kind of character is like, he doesn't want to get up. He doesn't want to keep fighting. He doesn't want to improve. He's lost the game. I'm sure he's died in Dark Souls too many times. And he's just kind of sitting there at the bonfire like, why bother? I don't want to do anything anymore. But you, the main character, are the only way to beat Dark Souls is to keep slamming your head against this brick wall until either the brick wall or you breaks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good analogy.
And
That's a frustrating game. I'm the one who quit. I've never been one of them.
But that's fine. I think this kind of game is a great lesson. Like if the game's not fun to you, you're not going to want to play. So I'm sure there's a million other games that you would enjoy.
Yeah.
But what if you do like the kind of Dark Souls flavor, or let's say comics, we're talking about comics. If you like drawing comics, if you like reading comics, you want to make them, and you get pleasure out of it, the only thing that's going to keep you grinding in hour 23 of the 24-hour comic is because you love comics. It's like running and jogging and doing marathons. I hear that there's something called the wall that runners hit in a marathon, where your body and your brain are like failing to communicate with each other, and your brain is trying to hit the shutdown button on your body, and you have to force your body to just keep moving. And I think in comics, or any discipline really, but you and I are comics guys, there is always the internal voice that says, give up, why are you doing this? And then there's those jerks who keep saying, you're a loser, you only made $8,000, you should give up. We need to have that voice in our head to say, no, in fact, this is my dream and this is what I need to do with my life. For me, it's a life and death kind of thing, not in like a dramatic way, but like if I'm not going to do comics, I need to stop immediately, rewrite my resume and get a job doing something else. Cause I've put myself in such, like I've arranged my life so that if I fail at this, I will not be able to earn a living anymore. So it's either go all in or find another job as quickly as possible. But that's how I kickstart my body into fight or flight survival mode. I will not fail this, because if I fail, I'm screwed. But I know my body, and that's when my survival mode kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, maybe they prefer the slow burn of, yeah, I'll just work 8 hours a day on my comic.
Yeah.
Do it. As long as we work on our comic for 8 hours a day or whatever, we can budget. Never stop working on your comic. If we're trapped in Twitter drama and stuff like that, this will be my last point. I'm so sorry for talking so much.
No, you're good.
If we and others, our peers perhaps, our community members, are on Twitter fighting with each other, that means you're not at your desk focusing. I can't focus when I have to go to Twitter every 5 minutes and respond to some jerk. I focus when I listen to music, audiobooks, stuff like that, and when I get in the zone. You can't be in the zone if you're jumping out of the zone every 5 minutes. So it may even be a strategy for some jerks to try to stop you from doing your book. Think of it like that. They're trying to stop you from succeeding by taunting you. And it's up to you to not respond to the taunt. Because most of the time when you say nothing, people forget about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like they move on
And
to another target.
let's say you're not doing this full time. Like I'm not doing comics full time. So why what's the point of even doing it? I do comics because one, it makes me happy, and two, I just love storytelling.
Yeah.
And if I stop doing that, I either have to find a new medium of for creating stories, or I just decide I don't want to be happy, because creating stories is what makes me super happy. And so don't listen to any of the hate.
Mm-hmm.
Do what makes you happy. Making comics. If is making comics making you happy, or is getting the dollar amount making you happy? And I think that's where you have to decide where you stand. If you're chasing the dollar, the fastest way to lose money is to constantly think about money. And this isn't about money. It's about happiness. I think we forget about that. But making comics, if that's what makes you happy, keep making comics.
Right.
That's my last point.
That's a great point. And I would even add, make your audiences happy. If you're serving your audience and thinking about how you can make them happy, that'll get you through those long hours too. Like, I don't want to draw today, but because people want to see this book, I'm going to work really hard and try to make them happy with today's panels. Mm-hmm. You keep doing that until the book's done. But I like ending on a positive note, for goodness sakes. Thank goodness that I'm glad that we had this conversation and that it went where it went.
No, it was good.
All right. So, feel free to plug your stuff one more time. How can we follow you? How can we support you?
Yeah, you can follow me at on Twitter, my favorite place, Tyler_C_world, or you can find me on Instagram at Draw and Talk. You can also, the best place to find me is youtube.com/Draw and Talk. I post most of my content there, and you can find all my social media handles and whatnot on there, as well as my Discord server for a bunch of up and coming creators. Mm-hmm. And my current Indiegogo Demons Volume 3 is it's on Indiegogo. It's a supernatural action story. It's about a Detective Ace Carter, and he encounters a demonic monster, and through that, this opens up a bunch of events, and we end the story at Volume 3, which we're currently funding. Over 300 pages of comics if you're new and you pick up the books, and we've got some great prices on there, very affordable. Seeing some of the Indiegogos I've seen, very affordable, and I think it's a good story and it's fun. And so if you feel like it's worthy of your time, worthy of your dollar, feel free to share it. Feel free to back it, and if you want to test it out, I've given out the first 26 pages for free.
Very good.
For anyone to check it out, because I don't want someone to be really disappointed that they got something they didn't want. If you read those first 20 pages and you're like, I like it, feel free to back it.
Very good. I think that's also a great show of confidence to say, I am so confident in this project that here, read it for free. Here's a demo of my game. And if you like it, there you go. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, of course, Tyler, you're always welcome back when you want to promote a project, or if you just want to talk about the news of the day. Tyler's a great guy. I hope everyone follows him and give him support, share his stuff around. Tomorrow I will be speaking to a gentleman who publishes under Pocket Jacks Comics, I think. And I'm sure we'll be talking about all kinds of spicy stuff and his projects as well. Thank you again, Tyler, for coming. I will talk to you guys next time.
Boom.
That's it. I'll hit stop here.